What is this life, if without care we have no time to stand and stare?
I'm afraid today's generation don't look skywards. It's there for you to see if you look up. But I'm afraid we've lost the habit of looking up and observing things. So let's go for a little stroll, and we'll start at the 15th century bookshop. Now, it is late 1400, and when you look at it you think it's going to fall down. But there's a wonderful tablet in the wall there. It tells you how far it is to Brighthelmstone, which we know now as Brighton. And it's still the same distance, sir, even today. But people don't look. And then if we come down a little bit further this way, we come to the top of Care Street. Now there's an interesting place. Still got the cobbles down the middle, sir, which are rather painful. And the story is that the Prince Regent, Prinny, and some of his young bucks raced coaches down there. I haven't seen it in writing, but I'm prepared to accept the version of it because they were all young bucks and they would do this thing for a wager. But behind where we're sitting now is the bowling green. Now, it's an original bowling green. It's not flattened, it's got humps and bumps. But it wasn't always the bowling green. It was the tilting ground for the castle, where the knights used to practice their skill at arms and charge at each other and try and knock each other senseless out of the saddles. However, we call it football today, but never mind, sir, never mind. But it was the tilting ground to the castle. When you come down the High Street, there is, or it was called, the Bull House Cafe. Written round there, it said, Tom Paine lived here, the revolutionary. Now, we're never taught about Tom Paine. He is a hero of mine. And he walked the streets of Lewes. He lived here for 6 years. He was a customs and excise man, which was a very dangerous job. And his manor, his area, was from here to Brighton, Brighton to Rottingdean, over to Alfriston, and back round again to Lewes to try and prevent smuggling. Now, people have got a funny impression of smuggling. They weren't romantic at all. They were very dangerous and highly organised. And if you were caught, it was one of two sentences: hung or deportation. So they never gave up easily. And they would kill a customs officer. And in those days, a customs officer was paid a grand total of £50 a year. And out of that, he had to feed his horse and look after his equipment and live. And Tom had a gift of words, sir. So some of his fellow officers said, could you present a petition to Parliament and try and improve their conditions? I'll do that, he said. So he went to Parliament, he handed a petition in, and he stood up in Parliament and spoke up for the customs officers. And the result was he was sacked. He got above himself. So he ended up with nothing, sir. When it was first made, there were lanterns in the trees and people could hire boats and they could have a leisurely time just canoeing up and down in all their best finery. I'm going back to the 1900s, because in those days there was no television or other mechanical entertainment, as I call it. Is a place of peace and tranquility. If we come down a little bit further, we come to a wonderful character, Gideon Mantell. Or they say, oh, he collected flints. He was a geologist. I said, no, that was his second trade. I said, and he was famed as a geologist right across Europe. Nobility from Europe come to visit his place for his collection. But first and foremost, he was a local GP. And I had the good fortune to read his diary. In it was one of his daily routines. It was all done on horseback, and he took all these pills and lotions and things, and he would start off, and first off he rode out to Rodmore, and then he crossed the river at South Ease and went to the village of Firle, where he did a skull operation on a labourer that had been kicked in the head by a horse. And then he came back to Glynde and attended a lady that was having a baby. He then went across to Ringmer and treated some people there. He then crossed the river to Barkham, and he went over the hills and dropped down into Falmer, the village of Falmer, sir. All this is on horseback.
Not one day.
On one day, he'd be gone all day, sir. And when he came back down to Brighton Road to Ashcombe, guess what? They were digging the road up. Nothing altered a lot. And he had an agreement with the men who were digging the road up. Any fossils they found would they put to one side, and he would send his manservant out from Lewes after he'd served dinner to collect them and bring them back. But when you look at the top of Mantell's house now, there are two great big seashells called ammonites, either end. He had them put there. He actually put them there himself. Now, we come to St Martin's Lane, and there's an overhanging house as it used to be. You could nearly reach across and touch the other house the other side still today. But they used to throw their slops at the window there. And if you were passing underneath, tough luck. You were well and truly watered for the day, sir. For people walk straight by and don't look. And now we have a little across the road. There's St Michael's Church. But look at the wall. The flints aren't round, they're squared. They're called napped flints, peculiar to Sussex. And the nappers who did it used to cut them underwater, in big bowls of water, because there was no health and safety in those days, and when you start splitting a flint, shards come off it like razor blades. So if you put it underwater, they wouldn't fly anywhere. What it was like on a winter's day, Lord only knows, sir. But they're all perfectly squared, and they're called napping. And when you look at them, it's a wonderful work of art, and it's so nice to look at, but it's peculiar to Sussex, and it was a trade. Now, if we go down further down the High Street, we come to the law courts. And if you look up there, you can see the sword of justice and the scales of justice. But if you stand over there and look back at the hotel called the White Hart, why is it called the White Hart, I say to people? Well, because no, look on the top. There's a heart. It's a deer. And it's white. And the hearts belong to the royal family. Not an ordinary deer. And to prove it, it's got a crown round its collar and a chain fixing it here to show that it belongs to the reigning royal family. It is their property. Don't touch it, because you could probably still get deported for poaching. One never knows today. Now go and stand that side of the road and look at Baker's the chemist. At the top of there's an old date in the late 1400s. It was an apothecary's in those days. So we've come from the 14th century down the High Street and ended up at the 14th century, sir, which I think is absolutely wonderful. The whole High Street is a whole page of history if you look up. and think, what is that? And ask, what does that mean? And you should do.